Son of God grieved. But his grief was never hopeless, because he knew what was coming next. The danger is when a believer grieves exactly like someone with no relationship with God at all, collapsing into despair, questioning his goodness out loud, declaring that life no longer has meaning. That is not honoring your loved one. That is allowing grief to dethrone your faith. Mourn deeply, cry freely, but never mourn like someone who has forgotten the resurrection.
Number 2. Never consult mediums or attempt to contact the dead. This is the most spiritually dangerous point on this entire list, and sadly, one of the most common, even among professing Christians. I once heard of a woman who, devastated after losing her husband, was convinced by a relative to visit someone claiming they could pass along a final message from the deceased. She went out of desperation, not malice. She simply wanted closure. But what she opened that day was not closure. It was a door. Deuteronomy 18:10 and 11 is direct. Let no one be found among you who practices divination or sorcery, or who consults the dead. This is not a suggestion, it is a command, repeated throughout Scripture, because God knows exactly how vulnerable grief makes us. When a person dies, they are immediately in the presence of the Lord, or separated from Him. They are not lingering nearby waiting to send messages through a stranger. Whatever responds in those sessions is never the person you lost. Grief opens a door in the human heart that the enemy knows how to walk through. Do not hand him that door because you miss someone. Take your sorrow to God in prayer, not to a medium in a dark room.
Number 3. Never turn the funeral into a stage for performance instead of worship. This one is subtle, but it is one of the most overlooked. There will be moments at funerals when grief becomes theater, when people compete in their displays of sorrow, when the loudest cry is treated as the most sincere love, and quiet faith is treated as coldness. I have watched families turn a casket into a battleground, fighting over who gets to speak, who gets to sit where, who is the most devastated, more focused on appearances than on honoring the person who passed. Proverbs 14:30, a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. That is not grief, that is pride wearing the mask of grief. A funeral is meant to be a moment of worship, of reflecting on the brevity of life, of pointing people toward Christ. The moment it becomes about who cries loudest, it stops being sacred. Number 4. Never bury unforgiveness alongside the body. This is one of the heaviest points on this list, and one of the most common. Many families arrive at a funeral carrying decades of unresolved bitterness, and instead of using that final moment to release it, they bury it deeper, convincing themselves that since the person is gone, there is nothing left to forgive. But unforgiveness does not disappear when someone dies. It calcifies. Mark 11:25, when you stand praying, if you hold anything against anyone, forgive them. Notice this verse does not say, unless the person has died. Forgiveness is not for the benefit of the person who hurt you, it is for the freedom of your own soul. I have seen siblings stand on opposite sides of a casket, unwilling to speak, allowing an old wound to win even at their own parents' funeral. The grave should never become a monument to bitterness. If you have unforgiveness toward the one who passed, or toward someone standing beside you at that funeral, do not let that casket close while your heart stays locked.
Number 5. Never place your hope in rituals, objects, or superstitions instead of Christ. Across many cultures, funerals come wrapped in traditions. Certain items placed in the casket, candles lit in specific patterns, rituals meant to protect the spirit of the deceased.
superstitions about what must or must not be done so the dead can rest properly. Colossians 2:8 warns us, "See to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy, which depends on human tradition rather than on Christ." Many of these traditions are not neutral. They quietly teach that a person's eternal rest depends on a ritual performed by the living, rather than on the finished work of Jesus on the cross. That is a dangerous substitution. The destiny of a soul was sealed the moment they took their last breath, not by a candle, not by a chant, not by an object placed beside them in a coffin. You can honor culture and family without surrendering biblical truth. Do not let tradition quietly replace the gospel at the very moment your family needs the gospel most.
Number 6. Never gossip about the deceased or their family during the gathering. This point is uncomfortable, but it needs to be said. Funerals have tragically become one of the most common places for gossip to spread. Hallways and parking lots fill with whispered judgments. Did you know how they really died? Did you hear what happened in that marriage? I always knew something was wrong in that family. Proverbs 11:13, a gossip betrays a confidence. James 1:26 adds, those who do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. I have witnessed grieving widows overhear conversations never meant for their ears. Conversations that turned the worst day of their life into entertainment for someone else. That is not just careless, that is cruel. A funeral is sacred ground. The tongue that gossips at a graveside is not honoring the dead. It is dishonoring the God who is watching every single conversation in that room.
Number 7. Never leave a funeral without examining your own readiness before God. Of all 7, this may be the most important. A funeral is one of the few moments in life when eternity becomes undeniable. The air is different, the silence is heavier, and yet so many people walk out of that building the exact same way they walked in, untouched, unchanged, unmoved. Psalm 90:12 prays, "Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom." Every funeral you attend is an invitation from God to ask yourself honestly, if that were my casket today, would I stand before the Lord